Brought to you by Modelo. One of the greatest knockouts you'll ever see! Oscar Stiffens
I think this might be the best weight class. if we created this, there's just so many good fighters in it. Yeah. Hello, everybody. So, fluff on my t-shirt. That would bug me. Okay, this is a video that I've decided we're going to do because I constantly talk about the need for a new weight class, and I don't just come up with these things and just say things off the top of my head. If I say something and I commit to it and you hear me say it a lot, there's a good reason why I'm saying it. And I think the reason I want to put this video together is that if ever I'm talking about this, there's always something that people can find that has my explanation. So like, you know what my thought process is and why I think this weight class is important. That reminds me. So the weight class I always talk about, and I know that there's been discussion of, so we've got 135, 145, 155, then it goes to 170. So the conversation of putting in a 165 and moving 170 to 175 would then make sense because then we go 180. I understand that. I have two issues with it. One is that if we do that, we only have the opportunity to add one weight class. Because if we move 170 to 175, then we've closed that gap, that 15-pound gap to 10. Same as we've done with the other ones. So it's nice and clean that we go every 10 pounds. I get that. But at the same time, and I think you'll see this with boxing as well, the weight classes where they're more populated, there are more weight classes. It makes more sense. There are more human beings on the planet between 155 and 185. So they're the most populated weight classes, which is why the skill level is higher in those weight classes. They're more competitive. So it makes sense in my eyes to create more weight classes around those areas. I also think the benefit, in the UFC's eyes is, you get another weight class, you've got another title holder, you've got another champion. You've also got a belt that's, 7 pounds away from the other two weight classes, which means that you could easily have one person defending two belts. And that's something that we see in boxing. We don't really see it in MMA. It would be nice for a fighter that's been dominant in one weight class to not have to jump up or down 15 pounds to be able to contend for another title. Okay. I have to breathe and take my time with this because there are a lot of elements to it. I have to have a little drink of my orange juice. Orange and grapefruit with a bit of ice. It's a good combination. That's my thinking liquid. Okay. 162. Why 162 and not 165? 162 is right between 155 and 170. The pound allowance that you get in every weight class, so if you fight at 155, you can weigh in at 156 as long as you're not fighting for the title. The 1 pound allowance at 162 is 163. That is the exact middle between the two weight classes. So it makes sense to have that. There's no problem with making the champion cut to 162. I mean, it's a nice, clean middle line between the two weight classes. There are also a lot of fighters that we see move between those two weight classes, a lot more than other divisions. how often do you see a middleweight move up to light heavyweight or a light heavyweight go to heavyweight? It's very rare. I mean, we've seen it recently. Vincent Prue's done it. I mean, we've had Jared Cannonier moving down from heavyweight to middleweight. Happens very rarely, but when it does happen, it's usually quite significant. Jessica Andrade moving down from bantamweight to strawweight, won the world title. So if we put in the 162 division, it gives fighters moving up from 155 a stopping point halfway to, see how the weight gain goes, see how their performance changes, see what it's like to fight someone that's slightly bigger but not 15 pounds bigger. 15 pound in the UK, we've referred to that as a stone. I mean, a stone's 14 pounds. Like, that's a lot of weight. That's a significant jump up. And it takes the human body a bit of time to gain, 14 to 15 pounds of quality muscle. And I know a lot of these guys are cutting weight, so they're not gaining loads of weight to go up a weight class. A lot of them, they just don't cut, or they cut a little less or whatever. To have that 7 pound difference allows people just to step up slightly. So what I've done is I've gone through the weight classes. Hang on, I've jumped ahead here. Another reason why 162. Okay, the old school of you will remember Pride. Pride never dies. And you'll remember Takanori Gomi. Okay. Takanori Gomi was the champion of the Pride lightweight division, which was 162, 73 kilos. And this in my opinion was a great weight class, just because it was, it suited him. I think the weight class was kind of built around him, but there was always that question of, what would happen if someone from the UFC would step over to Pride and vice versa. There was always that question. And the thing that always stuck in the back of my mind is it's not the same. It's because, there is a difference in weight class. And I think we saw that with Gomi moving over to UFC. Obviously later in his career, but I just don't think he looked quite as good. Anyway, the 162 weight class, 162, 163, has got some history anyway. So it's not like it's coming out of nowhere. That was just a slight tangent I wanted to just drop in there. So what I've done is I've gone through the weight classes, the rankings, and I've pulled together a 162 weight class for you. And this is just scribbled on my notepad. There's no real thinking gone into this aside from just going through and thinking who has made that transition or who could potentially be in a weight class lower or higher, who would maybe benefit from moving up. Let's look at the lightweight rankings right now. Obviously Khabib at the top. I think Khabib is going to run his course as a lightweight champion. If he beats the next two opponents, I would say that there's not much else for him to do in this division until he starts thinking about the likes of, Charles Oliveira and Dan Hooker, or, the younger guys that are coming through now that are potentially very dangerous. But, there does come a point where you don't want to keep, treading water if you're the champion. If you've defended the belt so many times, you do want something to kind of refresh your challenges, your goals. Khabib moving up to 170 and fighting Kamaru Usman or Tyron Woodley or someone like that, that's a big jump for him. They're bigger guys. I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but it's a big ask, because you can't ask Khabib to go up and fight Mike Perry or someone lower down in the rankings. It just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't sell. So the step up is great for Khabib, even if it's just a 15 pound difference. If you put in a 162 weight class, Khabib's got the option of stepping up and winning a second belt and defending both. There are also interesting matchups at 162 that could be made as a middle ground between guys that are not quite big enough or just big enough to be, 170 pounders. Okay, let me go through this. I know this is kind of difficult to follow, but this is how my brain works, I'm afraid. It takes me a while to keep up with it sometimes. So the 162 weight class, I've written straight away down in no particular order, Masvidal, Gilbert Burns, Paul Felder, Michael Chiesa, Kevin Lee, Rafael dos Anjos, Nate Diaz, Cowboy, Pettis, Colby Covington, and obviously McGregor. That is a weight class of superstars. You can make any of those matchups in any way you want, and they are fascinating matchups. You can also take Khabib as the lightweight champion and throw him in there for the inaugural 162 pound title. And you could match him up against any of those. Imagine Khabib against Masvidal for the 162 pound title. Imagine Masvidal v Conor for the 162 pound title. Create a new weight division. The fighters will fall into that weight class as we go. Like some of the guys I've added to this list, obviously Gilbert Burns has already moved up, having great success. we're going to find out, and we might already know by the time you watch this video, whether the fight against Tyron Woodley was a step too far or not. I think Gilbert Burns, as well as being a great 170 pounder, would be a fantastic 162 pounder. But we just don't know because he had to make the 15 pound leap up. So Gilbert Burns is an obvious one. He's already made the jump up. Paul Felder is one of the most obvious candidates for being stuck between two weight classes I've ever seen. I mean, when he fought Barbosa in Abu Dhabi, like there was literally 3% body fat in the octagon that night. If you take the referee out of the way, they were both shredded. I mean, I was surprised that Barbosa went down, but there's no way that Paul Felder had another ounce to lose. He was at the very, very minimum of his weight, even to the point where I think it could be detrimental to his performance. But Paul maybe not quite big enough to contend with the best welterweights in the world, but 162, he might be the king of the world. He might be the best fighter on the planet. We just don't know because that weight class is not there for him to try it. And I know it doesn't seem much, 7 pounds, but if you're a fighter that's 170 and you're thinking about cutting a weight class, if you can get to 162 and you know you still got another 7 pounds to go, that could kill you. That could just take the rest of the fight out of you. But that small drop to 162 is not too bad. I've done it myself. I fought at 162 twice. One reason was because I had a fight at 170 against a fighter called Alexander Isidro, who's an excellent black belt, really good jiu-jitsu player, but a definite 155er. I had a big size advantage over him. He was the Cage Warriors lightweight champion, and I was the Cage Warriors welterweight champion. So we agreed to rematch at 162 because it was in the middle. In the back of my mind, I was hoping for that weight class because I'm thinking about trying to get to Pride. And then a short while after that, I had a rematch against David Barron, and he actually went on and fought Gomi in Pride after winning that tournament. So it's a little bit sore for me, but still, the weight class there is, it's there. We've got to make it. Okay, I'm going to continue with where I was at. So Felder, obviously, right in between the two weight classes. I'm starting calling these fighters in betweeners, but it's the 162 division, light welterweight is what I call it. Michael Chiesa has already made the step up. That's another fight you make at 162 straight away. Michael Chiesa against Kevin Lee. He's the next one on my list as too big for lightweight. Kevin Lee moves up. He doesn't have to jump all the way up to welterweight, which is a big jump for someone of his frame because he's not. What's Kevin Lee? 5'9", 5'10"? Like sometimes the additional 15 pounds on that frame can just take that extra bit out of the performance. So again, I think Kevin Lee at 162 might be right on the money. RDA, again, you stand him next to an average welterweight, he's just not as big. Doesn't mean he can't contend, but that's more down to his technical ability and less about his physical prowess. 162 is right on the money for RDA. And I think what a lot of fighters will discover is, if they've had a career at 155, it will get to the stage where they're like, this continually making this weight's becoming an effort for me. I'm going to step up to 162 and try it, and if it works out, there might be another step up again after that. RDA might still have ended up at 170, feeling that was a better weight class for him. But, at least try that weight class out in between would make more sense to me. Nate Diaz, another one, he's a superstar no matter what weight class he's in, but he's never been a top flight contender in either weight class. I think his highest ranking was 6 at lightweight. But Nate Diaz at light welterweight might be a different story altogether. He might just not be quite big enough for a welterweight. Same goes for the next two on my list, Cowboy and Pettis. That fight the other week could have quite easily been made at 162. I think Pettis looked kind of soft at the weight class. I think Cowboy doesn't really necessarily cut a great deal of weight to make 170 and looks in great shape anyway. So both of those guys could have fought at 162, and that could have been one of the first fights to introduce that weight class. The next one down, I know he's never been lower, but you stand him next to some lightweights and you think to yourself, Colby Covington could definitely make that weight class, and that really throws an interesting character into the mix, along with the likes of Masvidal and Kevin Lee, Diaz. The trash talking and the entertainment there is going to be rife. And the obvious one, and I've not left him to last for any particular reason, but Conor McGregor. He's the money fight, and I'm of the opinion that there are probably two fighters in the UFC right now that could quite easily step up and front that division immediately, and no one's going to argue if McGregor and Masvidal are the two top contenders for that belt. No one's going to argue with that. because it makes sense, you know. And anyone that wants to argue that, like, so say Masvidal and McGregor fight, and Masvidal wins, then you've got Colby Covington coming down from welterweight to fight him. There's a great storyline there. If McGregor wins, you've got Khabib coming up to fight Conor, and there's an enticement there to rematch Conor immediately because there's a new belt on the line, and it's only a 7-pound difference. I mean, the other thing that's worth talking about is, you know, who's left in the divisions, you know, when you don't take these fighters away. Because obviously, I think the concern is that if you create a new weight division in between, you're going to lose a lot of fighters from lightweight and welterweight. My first argument is that those weight classes are so busy anyway that there are so many guys underneath the top 15 that don't even come onto people's register because they're not in the rankings. I think giving both of those, it's like pruning a tree. You know, sometimes the best thing to do is to take the champion out of the division and, you know, move John Jones up to heavyweight and allow that division to breathe. Sometimes you just need to cut the top off. Sometimes it's a bit more technical than that. Sometimes, you know, if you're a bonsai master, you need to kind of trim away and shape the division. You need to encourage it to grow. And what you could do here, technically, you wouldn't even have to do it forcefully. You could give the option. I think it would be interesting to put the offer out there to fighters. Hey, if there's a 162 weight class, you know, who wants to be in? I mean, like that is really a natural weight class for a lot of fighters that get stuck in between the two that are current. Okay, so just before we wrap up, I just want to kind of point out that obviously if we're going to lose some of the big names, or maybe even, you know, thin out a couple of divisions, like if we're pruning these divisions and allowing them to grow a little bit, allowing some of the guys outside of the top 15 at welterweight and lightweight to maybe creep their way in by taking some of the other guys out and creating a new weight class. You know, you've still got the likes of, I mean, Usman wouldn't be able to make it down a weight class. Neither would, I would say, Woodley, Edwards, Thompson, Maia, Jeff Neal, Robbie Lawler, Vicente Luque. They're top 15 welterweights right now that just couldn't make lightweight, I don't think. So it's not like we're going to lose a big presence of strong welterweights. That also allows, you know, 4 or 5 places in the division to open up for, you know, for the younger fighters to come in and start contending for those spots, which we're going to find some superstars because they are out there. We're just not really hearing about them too much at the moment. Same goes for lightweight. And even with me thinning out the lightweight division for 162, I mean, you've still got Gaethje. I've not talked about him moving up a weight class. Khabib is a potential, obviously, but Poirier's still in that division because he was a featherweight. I don't see him moving up. Ferguson's still a lightweight right now, but could move up. Hooker used to be a 145er, so I see him comfortable there. See Hooker and Oliveira staying in that weight class. Maybe even Iaquinta for Hare's on a streak at the moment. Like, there's still a lot of guys. Gillespie, Makachev, Dober, Dariush. It's not like we're destroying 2 weight classes to make another one. Those weight divisions are still very, very busy. So anyway, there's my argument. 162 weight class, I think it'd be a really fun one to add in. Light welterweight, there's a bit of history there with the old Pride weight classes and Gomi and all that, and all the great fighters that fought in that division. And now we've got, you know, guys that are jumping across that weight division, and it's 15 pounds is a big jump. So let's give them a stopping point in between and give someone a title, because we get some great fights in that weight class. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.